Okay, we've opened the doors. We'll wait to see if anybody joins us this morning. Massive warm welcome for you. This is our final webinar of the series. Today's is obviously the primary focus for this morning on how to make your anti-bullying campaign a success. And this is our final day of this particular webinar series. So a very warm welcome to you if you are joining us this morning. It is my pleasure to have you with us. If you have been with one of our webinars before, then welcome back. If this is your first webinar of the series, then just to let you know, it is going to be very interactive. We have our fantastic moderator, Susanna, who's working behind the scenes, who is going to be giving you some helpful links on the chat function, which you should be able to see right now. Oh, it was beautifully done. And you should also see that we do have a live Q&A function to ask any and all of your burning questions, whether it be about anti-bullying campaigns in particular, anything to do with the Diana Award, then please do whack it onto the Q&A box. We do have a little bit of time towards the end where I'll be hopefully answering any and all of your questions in real time and trying to help you out as best as possible. We are also going to have some interactive polls that are going to be available on your screen, ready to click and vote on a couple of different topics. We are going to perhaps do some as a little icebreaker, just as we wait for perhaps a couple more people to join us this morning. Let's get your first icebreaker poll up on your screen, available for you to vote. Very, very simply, favorite season: spring, things start to come back to life; summer, beach; autumn, you got those magical colors; or winter, you love yourself some snow, hot chocolate, got those frosty vibes, whatever it may be. Little bit of an icebreaker poll, testing the function for you to do as we are waiting for a couple more people to join. We have 66% of you voting on the favorite season so far, and we do have a little bit of a spectrum of opinion. One of the seasons is taking the majority, only a slim majority, but is there nonetheless. Interestingly, no one's going for winter so far. None of you liking those frosty vibes, snows, hot chocolates? No? Talking to the wrong audience, clearly. Fair. Got 83% of you voting so far for your favourite season. I'll give you another 5 seconds and we'll see which way you vote. And then we've got another icebreaker, which is quite interesting as well. We'll go 3, 2, 1. All right, let's have a look at the results. As you can see, we've got a tie for summer and autumn, but spring, the most popular season for this particular audience this morning. Things start to come back to life. You know, you're kind of coming out of that January gloom, getting back into the swing of things. Very nice. Let's have a look at icebreaker number 2, because I think this one's going to be quite interesting as well. This one's particularly about lockdown. What do you consider to be the most positive outcome out of lockdown? Is it a greater appreciation for our key workers, a reduction in the harmful environmental impact, we've saved money and eaten better, or are we more appreciative of the outdoors and nature? What do we think? Trying to sway lockdown, COVID-19, all of these different types of things in a positive way. There are positive outcomes. Which do we think is the most positive? And obviously it's subjective, right? I think if you have a family member that's been impacted or working for the NHS, then perhaps an appreciation for key workers is likely to be on the list. A reduction in the harmful environmental impact. We saw that the canals in Venice were clear for the first time in, I think it was 30 years. We've got dolphins returning to areas, deer returning to cities. We see the impact that we can have if we wanted to, and obviously this was forced, but interesting to see that it's still under human control. And appreciative of the outdoors. You know, you've been locked in, kept inside for such a long time. It's nice to be able to go out there, go to the national parks, go on different walks, and perhaps we are more grateful for the areas around us, perhaps. I'll give you 5 more seconds. We've got 76% of you voted, and then we'll get started with your morning's training. I'll give you 3, 2, 1. All right, let's have a look. So we have the most common answer. 50% of you actually voted that you are more appreciative of the outdoors and nature. And the next is then the environmental impact, and then key workers there as well on the list. None of you have saved money and eaten better. No, she's taken full advantage of those extra spends and those delicious, delicious takeaways. Fair enough. We are going to get started with today's training. It is how to make your anti-bullying campaign a success with a focus on primary schools specifically. But just before we get started, if you haven't seen me before on one of our webinars, my name is Charlton. I'm an anti-bullying training coordinator, and all that means is that for the last 2 years, my job has been to travel around the UK, go into primary schools and secondary schools, and to deliver our anti-bullying ambassador program, which trains young people, but also staff, to become that anti-bullying, representative, and to be the upstander in our communities, and crucially for young people to take on more responsibility, to offer their emotional support to anybody who might be going through bullying behavior. A couple of just random likes and dislikes. Probably my favorite smell in the entire world is that of freshly cut grass. It's just glorious. I don't even have really an explanation. It's just brilliant. Dislikes. Okay, so previously in the webinar series, we've discussed toe socks, those socks with individual toe holes. It doesn't just stop there. Shoes as well. If you have shoes with individual holes for you, just even describing it just creeps me out. Nothing against the people, but the habit and the birthing of this concept just really unnerves me, I think, more than anything else. Random fact, I did used to be an English teacher in Italy. I lived there for a while. It was amazing. The pistachio ice cream and the spaghetti is as good as everyone says. Germany, my ancestry is part German, so to be able to go there and teach was really cool. And spending some time in Cambodia volunteering on an education program was amazing. All different cultures, but all giving me kind of the understanding that you need to tailor your approach to the individual child, no matter whether that's in the UK or anywhere. And I swear, as teachers joining with us today, you'll know that every young person has those different things that make them amazing, but also those different things that you will have to do or say to get through to them when it comes to teaching, or whether it's anti-bullying. That's something that I'm quite grateful that I've been able to bring in, and I've loved every second of being a training coordinator. I'm really happy to be able to do this online as part of our webinars to you staff that have joined us this morning. So thank you for being here. We will get started with today's webinar, go through some aims. These are just the things that we're going to cover, and hopefully things that you'll have achieved by the end of today's session. So the first one, quite simply, is to increase your confidence in applying a whole school approach. What does that mean? Who's involved? How do we do it? We're going to go through that. Also, to get inspiration for our anti-bullying campaigns from our showcase schools. So for quite a long time, for the last perhaps 10 years, we've been running our anti-bullying ambassador program, and we've trained some unbelievable young people who have really taken the emphasis to lead and to facilitate some anti-bullying campaigns that have had a really good impact. We're going to show you some of these examples. We're going to show you quite a lot of videos of examples of what young people and staff have both done to really tackle bullying behavior in their schools. Hopefully this can inspire you staff listening along to kind of get these ideas so that when we do go back to school, we can start to run our own campaigns and have a similar impact. Thirdly, to identify the different ways to building a successful anti-bullying campaign. What does that mean? How do we measure success? And how do we measure the impact? And then finally, to develop an understanding of how to plan and structure a school's anti-bullying journey. How do we plan and structure those campaigns? I'm going to be taking you through a step-by-step basis, offer you some really helpful resources towards the end, and then hopefully we can start to be thinking about these things so that when we do go back to school, an anti-bullying campaign can be quick on the agenda and we can roll it out to have a really measured and beneficial impact. So without further ado, the first aim is a whole school approach. What actually does that mean? Well, quite simply, this means everyone in your school community tackling bullying behavior. Now, the standard structure for a whole school approach is where students are taking on responsibility. They're educating themselves and others to truly want to make a difference, and then to know how to make a difference. And that involves knowing how to report instances of bullying behavior, how to offer support to those going through it, but crucially, students working with staff. Because staff members listening along, give me a virtual raise of the hand if you'd agree that you cannot do all of this yourselves. Most of you will have multiple roles in school. You won't just be a subject teacher. You can't deal with bullying behavior by yourself. Students need to take on more responsibility. But then staff, you also can't do this without the support of your senior leadership team or head teacher. And so it has to be a pronged approach of all of these groups working together. But are these the only groups in the school community? Is it just students, staff, and SLT? Or actually, are there many other members that are perhaps non-academic staff, different members that do make up the school community that absolutely need to be involved if you are going to have a truly whole school approach? So who actually should get involved? So obviously when we are talking about students. At the end of today's webinar, I'm going to be giving you a link because we are registering interest for our anti-bullying ambassador program. So for us to come into your primary school and train your students to become anti-bullying ambassadors, it has to start there. Students absolutely are the foundation, the building block to a different culture and student behavior. So students, obviously, the first one to get involved. Teaching staff, again, it has to be together. Teaching staff to be trained to become staff leads, working with students on how to spot bullying behavior, how to change a culture, how to facilitate campaigns, and how to work together to build that community feel. But obviously you need support from your senior leadership team. It has to come from top down as well as bottom up. So how do we train SLT on the need for anti-bullying training, how to educate SLT on how we can kind of work together with students specifically. But then it also has to come from, example, a group of governors. These groups all have to work together. Governors absolutely should take on a more central role when it comes to anti-bullying specifically. And then parents, the group that I haven't discussed yet. Parents, as you know, listening along, play a huge role in the school community. And yet sometimes there can be a lot of miscommunication. Sometimes there can be an example of where parents aren't aware of the work schools are doing to tackle bullying. They aren't aware of the school's anti-bullying policy. They're not aware of any campaigns. And this will cause a problem when there might be examples of bullying behavior. Parents are going to come in all guns blazing, my child's being bullied, what are you doing about it? This doesn't need to be substantiated for that not to have a really negative impact. So parents absolutely need to be involved in any of the building blocks when it comes to a policy, when it comes to campaigns. Parents must be involved. And that can be as simple as publishing the work you're doing on a school website, having a notice board at an entrance or an exit to the primary school where parents are going to see it on a daily basis. All of these types of things that we can do. But it doesn't just stop there. When we talk about the wider school community, who are we describing? It is absolutely, in school, you will have specific staff for IT. Again, these people absolutely need to be trained on how to spot bullying behavior, the reporting system, and how to facilitate a better culture in school. And it does exactly the same for cleaning staff, dinner staff, temporary staff, and bus drivers. Because those of you staff listening along, give me a virtual raise of the hand if you would agree. Bullying behavior does not simply happen just in the classroom. If you agree, absolutely. We've got Paula raising her hand there. It's true, right? It's not going to happen just in the classroom. It is going to happen perhaps in the library. It might happen in the canteen. It might happen outside the school gates. It absolutely still happens on the bus to and from school. And so if the bus driver, if the dinner staff, if the IT staff are not trained and are not clued up on how to address these issues, then you have members of the school community that are not working together to tackle bullying behavior and to offer support to students who need it most. And so getting all of these groups involved is incredibly important to having that whole school approach. And this could be a campaign in itself for when we do go back to school, is communicating this to SLT, communicating this to our head teacher on having a school community-wide training session on all of the issues that I've spoken about. So I'm going to give you an example. We gave this message to a primary school and they really took this on board, and these primary school students absolutely thought, what can we do to have a whole school message? And they organized a whole school march of all of the staff members that we just saw in the previous slide to spread that message. Now, today's webinar, there are going to be a lot of videos where I'm going to be describing an example of a campaign, and then I'm going to show you how schools, primary schools specifically, have put this into action. And I'm hoping that this will give you the element of tangibility, where I'm giving you perhaps pieces of advice, and then we can see how that advice has been taken by students and really ran in our schools across the country. So here's our first example of a whole school approach, a whole school message, as done by a fantastic primary school that you hopefully should be able to see and hear now.
Stand up.
so hopefully you would have been able to see and hear the wonderful students at Lidge Green. And at the end, you'll see that whilst it was majority students kind of making those bold statements and marching around, but on the wider scope of that camera angle, you could see there was every single staff member in that school at that time was out there in solidarity, marching for the exact same message, truly demonstrating a whole school approach. And it can be as simple as letting students march through the school with whatever anti-bullying message they want. Students are going to feel incredibly involved in the school community, that they are both valued and respected, that their voices can be heard, but that they have the solidarity of every staff member, whether it's non-academic staff, whoever it is, behind them as well. So that's just one example. So what we're going to do now is kind of sticking to the aims of today's webinar. It was describing the whole school approach, but it was then being inspired by examples of different campaigns and understanding how different campaigns can have an impact. So I'm going to be going through different examples of anti-bullying campaigns, how you can incorporate this into wider school community, and I'm going to be showing you an example for each type, which students have done entirely themselves. So the first one here, an example for a brilliant anti-bullying campaign to really get to the crux of the issues in school and involving the wider school community is to simply run a survey, run a set type of consultation that every single member of the school is filling in, and you can ask questions like, what do you think is the most common type of bullying in this school? Is it verbal, indirect, physical, cyber? All of these different types of questions. Where, for students, where do you feel the most safe? Where do you feel the least safe? And where do you think bullying behavior occurs in school? What would you like to be seen done about it? Asking all of these questions will give you the data from staff and students, and then you can address that data by running a campaign that tackles those specific issues. And again, here is an example of that being done.
The first things that we did when we came back from St Andrews was to do a survey of different types of bullying that was happening in the school.
We didn't know that there was so many bullying taking place in our school without those surveys. And then those surveys made us really aware of that there is bullying in our school and more that we actually thought of.
The Junior Student Council, they completed an anti-bullying questionnaire, and it came to light that they did not understand the language of the school anti-bullying policy. And so a few of the girls said, Mrs. Mayers, we will make our own student-friendly anti-bullying policy. Now we've done that with the juniors, and we are currently doing it with the senior group, so that we'll bring everything together with a few of the girls and write an anti-bullying student-friendly policy.
Okay, so a couple of examples there. One of simply doing a survey to students on what they thought was the most common type of bullying in their school community. And then for the second, after they got a survey, the results said that students just did not understand the school's anti-bullying policy, which we did cover in a previous webinar. And if you haven't seen it, it will be on demand. We explore that in quite a lot more detail. But it is truly crucial to just get that student voice, get that staff voice, and then act on whatever it is that comes back, whatever feedback comes back. If it is about an anti-bullying policy, then make it accessible, make it understandable. If it is about a type of bullying, then take that in and address that specific type, whether it's campaigns to tackle cyberbullying, whether it's to tackle the way we speak to each other in terms of verbal bullying, whatever it is, a survey can be really, really useful for you to see what can be done and for students to take that initiative. So the next one is get creative. A lot of people will say to me, okay, so to fundraise, we've done a bake sale and we've also done posters up in school. And whilst I'm not diminishing that the impact that could potentially have, we've seen it before. Everyone's done a bake sale. Is that really gonna get across the message that you're really trying to tackle in school? And whilst posters can be great for awareness, there are definitely other ways in which messages can be put across for different types of learners. So here's another example of one of my favorite and most creative anti-bullying campaigns that I've ever seen. Here it is.
This is Little by Little. This silhouette dance shows emotional roller coaster of bullying and how to prevent it.
They told me I'm no good.
The reason we chose dance to show the strong message is because people really connect with what's happening. It shows what physically happens rather than just telling people what happens.
You can win up in your room like no one cares where you've been. You're not alone. Just let the daylight in.
Okay, so that was an amazing school, Springwell. And whilst these were older students, there are definitely going to be primary school students that really want to get up and dance. They might want to act, sing, whatever it is. You can absolutely harness those creative talents to try and portray the message of anti-bullying. Maybe they could do a role play of students being bullied in school and then anti-bullying ambassadors coming in and being the upstander. You can run creative assemblies demonstrating these role plays, different ways that students can kind of represent themselves, but also represent the message in a way that other students might understand, because not everybody responds to a poster. People, as you staff members will be very much well aware, different students have different needs and different ways that they absorb information. So for those students that perhaps need something a little bit more dynamic, this can be a really fun and inclusive way to incorporate all of these ideas. And again, to let students take the lead and then feel kind of more valued, more respected, and more involved in the anti-bullying message. Because again, you staff, you can't do it all yourselves. You don't have to come up with all of the ideas yourselves. Let students run with it and they will produce some incredible things. And I'm excited to show you some more. So make your campaign specific. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Now, if you haven't heard of our ambassador program, if you don't know anything about it, we do have something called our aftercare team and our badges, our anti-bullying ambassador badges. Now, what this means is we have 4 different badges which can really help to make your campaign specific, as the slide says, trying to tackle different issues. So if you go onto our school, our Dynamo Award website, there is a link specifically about earning badges, and it's for young people to take on that initiative in a specific area. So there are 4 badges that I'll show you now. So the first one, we have respect, we also have online safety, we have community, and we have well-being. Now, as you see there, community action. Can you earn these during lockdown? How long does it take? All of these questions are available on our website. We can get a link to you either sent in the chat or we can send it afterwards. And I'll explain kind of what these mean. So respect. If you've done a survey in school and perhaps young people are telling you that there are issues focused around a level of disrespect, maybe it is that the way people speak to each other, maybe it's respect about a certain protected characteristic, then you can act on that. Aim towards your respect badge, which basically says our school is tackling bullying behavior, we are tackling issues of respect, and we are tailoring our anti-bullying campaigns around this notion. If you send 5 pieces of evidence, 5 things that you are doing for that area, send it in to us. We can send out the respect badge for yourself as staff members, but for every member of your school team, which basically says, this is what we are doing, we've done it successfully, and this is the type of thing that you can publish out there to parents, to governors, to everybody involved in the school community, to get them more involved and to prove this is what we are doing. And I'm going to give you some examples as well. So when it comes to perhaps well-being, here's what a school did when they wanted to find different ways to improve positivity, to increase that positive behavior. This is an example that they did to improve student well-being and issues around respect in school. And again, it's super cute. The students did it themselves, and it's just kind of wonderful to see. So here's this example.
This is the peaceful problem solving process. If we have a problem in the playground, we have a special handshake to make up. We don't like anyone saying these words. It's your fault, it's not fair, and I hate you.
So the students there, they realized, they came up with it themselves, and they said, okay, we don't like the way people speak to each other out in the playground. So let's come up with this peaceful problem-solving process, which I think is brilliant. They created their own poster, put the poster out on the playground, and it really just kind of breaks it down in very student-friendly terms. Here's what we don't want. Here's what we can do instead. And even the student-friendly nuance of a special handshake to make up. It's brilliant because you know that that's come from students. You know students have created that themselves. They've run with it, and that's going to have such a big impact. And that is to improve kind of issues around respect and positivity, which is just a really example of making your campaign specific around an issue that is relevant to the needs of students and run by students. And I think that's wonderful. We do have another one here. So how do we incorporate online safety and make sure that it remains student-led? So in primary schools, when you kind of get to year 5 and year 6, you're entering this transitional period, this kind of age in which they are going to be more likely to be on online games. They are more likely to be starting to be exposed to technology, And around year 6, year 7 is when parents start to think, oh, should we be getting them a mobile phone? If they might be starting to walk to school themselves, getting the bus, then perhaps a phone's good for safety. But of course, we know that as soon as a young person gets a mobile phone, they're downloading all these apps, they're messaging all their friends. And so online safety needs to be incorporated around that age before they're starting to be exposed to technology, so we can act preventatively rather than in a reactionary sense. If young people already have these understandings of how to keep themselves safe online, how to spot and tackle cyberbullying before they get technology, then when they get it, they're already able to put these measures in place. So here's an example of a campaign that tackles exactly that.
We take cyber safety really, really seriously at Lidget Green Primary School, and the children are trained from very young ages, even from reception when they get their very first login and their very first password.
Anti-bullying ambassadors are teaching the children how to be safe online, and here are our top tips. If someone picks a picture of you online that you don't like, report them.
My advice is to keep your password strong and change it often.
If someone shares or tags you into a photo that you don't like, either report it, ask them to take it down, or tell your mum or dad. If someone sends you a nasty text message,
Report it to an adult and don't delete the evidence, I believe was that young lady's final sentence. But again, Lidget Green doing incredible things. But it's so important to be able to incorporate these things like online safety. But again, don't be afraid to hand it back to students. As you can see, students have come up with these messages themselves, they've filmed it, and for their peers to be able to see this, automatically to me, if you're a year 3, year 4, year 5, and you see year 6s giving out online safety advice and videos like this put up around school on the school televisions, we all know that year 3s, 4s, and 5s look up to year 6s as the big dogs of primary school. They're on the school benches, they've got these privileges, and you want to emulate that. So you're absolutely going to listen to students who are giving out this advice. And for it to come from students then is so incredibly powerful. And again, just really makes young people feel that their voices are able to be heard. They feel respected and valued, and they're listening to their peers give them this advice, so that by the time they get to secondary school, you already have all of these issues going around in their minds. They're already going to be in a good position to keep themselves safe. And that, of course, is paramount. So, next one. Engage and involve staff, parents, and the wider community. So we mentioned about a whole school approach, but how exactly can we do that? How can students do this? And what campaigns are going to be relevant to this particular point? So here, let's have a look at what this school did.
As an anti-bullying ambassador, I spent the entire evening training the teachers, and it was very scary. The outcome of it was that they came and they were saying how good it was and how good the evening was and how much they got out of the evening as much as we did.
Okay, so I have an example there of young people training teachers on all these different issues around anti-bullying, but also cyberbullying. If you perhaps have some year 6s, year 5s, who you think are regularly on these kind of online video games, are living in the digital sphere, who know things like Snapchat and TikTok and YouTube, which are the 3 most popular apps around the world for that age demographic, for those kind of 8, 9, 10 year olds. YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat are easily the most popular, the most widely used. And so if we think that our young people are kind of the relative experts in these fields, then let them teach parents and teach staff about what these apps are, what they do, what their dangers are, what their safety features are. And that can be, again, an incredible way to make them have this level of responsibility and to train staff and parents and to get them involved in the work that we're doing in school. So another really, really good example of giving students that emphasis. And if they are the expert, let them tell us. Next, ensure a mix of activities are focused on both prevention and intervention. So we already spoke about preventative measures for online safety. If you are training year 5s and 6s on how to keep themselves safe online, but before they get mobile phones, before they get these apps, then that is a preventative measure. Intervention, obviously, then, is where an issue has already happened and we are putting something in place to deal with that. In school, you need a good balance of both. And again, let's have a look at some examples of what young people have done to demonstrate that.
I was bullied by verbal and some physical
my confidence was knocked down almost zero. But I wrote it down and put it in the bully box, and a teacher found it, and it was sorted immediately.
If you are being bullied, you can report it by putting a note in the bully box.
If you are feeling down and you need to raise your self-esteem, you can write a note into the a little bit of me time box.
If you've done something you regret, then you can put it in the sorry box.
Okay, so another example of kind of a bully box, a sorry box. Now for me, this can be both preventative and an intervention. Because if you have a reporting bully box up in school, someone who might be likely to exhibit that bullying behavior sees that there is this reporting box and might think twice because they might be reported. That can be preventative. Also, intervention, if a bullying incident has already happened, the student needs to write it down, put it in the box, then you have intervened. So you're kind of ticking two off there in one action. And again, let students design it themselves, let them promote it, let them do an assembly on it, and that could be a really fantastic way. So this is another one. I absolutely love this this measure, but I'm not going to say too much about it. I'm just going to play it and we'll talk about it afterwards. But this is a brilliant campaign that young people did themselves again.
In my class we were having problems, so we started circle time and we wrote compliments about each other.
Oh, you're smart and you're talented at basketball.
Grace, you're good at singing and you're talented to draw.
We like compliments because it brings a smile to your face and stops bullying.
I think Smile and Compliments Day is great for the children, but also for the adults. It's lovely to read something nice about yourself, and to smile at everybody makes you feel really happy and upbeat.
At Drew Primary, we encourage our children to compliment each other. We also feel it is really important to compliment each other as colleagues.
I just love that one because it's such almost a mature way to deal with issues that are cropping up. And again, this came from students. They recognized that we were having some arguments between each other and people weren't speaking to each other nicely. And so students and staff worked together to come up with a Smile and Compliments Day in which two people that were perhaps having conflict were sat down in the classroom in front of everybody and told to simply exchange a compliment, an honest compliment of what you liked about that other person. Try to mediate those different issues. And again, what I love about that is staff not resting on their laurels and understanding that that can be so beneficial for staff members to do as well, and to be that role model, to exhibit that best practice, and for staff to write compliments to one another, and to really get involved in that Smile Day. When we talk about a whole school approach, staff doesn't have to be teaching staff. Absolutely get the cleaning staff, IT staff, temporary staff involved in this as well, to have that culture of change in a school community. So I absolutely love that one. And again, that can be both preventative and an intervention. I just love it. So the next bit, how do we use social media and make sure it's accessible? So with that, again, without saying too much, this next video is absolutely brilliant. So let's have a look at what happened. So Danny there is an amazing young anti-bullying ambassador who tried to make the anti-bullying message more accessible. And so what he did was created these sign language videos on social media, for his own social media, but also the schools, published them out there, got traction from the local newspaper, and just created this campaign to make messages of all kinds kind of more accessible, to train young people himself to be that role model and the upstander. And it had such a massive impact. So student-led social media messages can have a massive impact. Danny's a really good example there. Now we're going to get on to our last example of a campaign. And I've definitely left this last on purpose. So important to run activities that simply promote positivity. Do something that young people can relate to, that they can get involved in, and it simply has to be fun. Like we said, bake sales are great, but it only goes so far. What can we do to incorporate as many young people as possible that are going to want them to get involved, that make anti-bullying cool, make it something that they can really get behind? And this example is just brilliant. I'm not going to say much more about it. How do we bring people together, help them learn a new skill, make it fun, make it accessible, and get as many people involved, staff members included. This was completely run by a primary school themselves, and it's just magic. Okay, and an absolutely incredible Enniskillen Primary School who realised that they had some students with different needs, had some students that were deaf or hard of hearing, and they wanted to include every single person in their anti-bullying campaign, which essentially was just promoting positivity. They'd all watched The Greatest Showman. They wanted to have that message that you can be whoever it is that you want to be, and how do we make it as inclusive as possible. I just love that because everyone as well got involved. You saw every staff member, some really sassy staff members getting fully involved. And I just love that message because that is so powerful, so positive, and it's something that students are going to want to get involved in. And again, that video was blasted out on social media, was put around the school TV, sent out to the newspapers, really just promoting that anti-bullying message, getting as many people behind them as involved as possible. I absolutely love that. And at the end of the video is how are you going to change the world? What we're going to talk about now, as we mentioned in AIMS, I'm going to take you through a step-by-step kind of basis on how do we plan and structure anti-bullying campaigns. So I want you to think about this now as we're in lockdown. Some of you might be going back to schools with different age groups, but as we're really gearing up to go back to school for the next academic year, what can we think about now so that we can put it in place when we do get there? What can we send out perhaps to our students to get them to think about this over the summer? And how do we really kickstart when we do go back to schools? So there's 4 steps. I'm going to take you through them now. So step 1, make sure that you are arranging regular meetings with your students at least once a fortnight, and make sure you stick to it. So if your school doesn't have anti-bullying ambassadors, then at the end I'm going to give you a link. We are ready to go into schools whenever we are given the green light. We are already taking interest. The training is completely free. You can train up to around 15 students at a time to be your anti-bullying core group, who will then take that emphasis and run the campaign. So if you don't have ambassadors for now, this can be buddies, prefects, school counsellors, whatever system, you will have something in place. Whatever that is, make sure that you have regular meetings, because as soon as that consistency is lost, if you perhaps meet up every week, but then it kind of drifts off and you don't keep on top of it, then there's your traction's gone. That needs to have momentum that only comes with frequency and consistency. So make sure that anti-bullying remains in the minds of your students, it remains in the agenda of the school, and it's not something that's just going to be dropped and left to go fall by the wayside. So step 1, arrange meetings, stick to it, and make sure they are planned and rigid. Step 2, identify the needs of your particular school and basic campaigns around these. So as we mentioned earlier about a whole school survey, this is to identify what your students are telling you are the biggest issues, because every school will have little things that are completely different school cultures, different types of behavior, and that needs to be tailored to. So perhaps you might have a school where verbal bullying is the most common. You might have a school where cyberbullying is really prevalent. You might have an example where there's homophobic language, there's different discriminations with culture. Whatever it is, a whole school survey is a really, really good way to find out what your school and students need. Make sure your campaigns are tailored around this to have the biggest, most relevant impact. Step 3, get your students to use a SMART framework. Now, staff members, you might already do this in your day-to-day practice, and it might sound maybe a higher level for primary school students, but it doesn't have to be, because this can be broken down and explained really simply. So specific, just make sure your campaigns are specific. Is it tackling homophobic language? Is it tackling positivity? What is your campaign truly trying to achieve? And then make sure it's measurable. So if you do a survey which asks students, for example, how safe do you feel in school? What do you think is the most common type of bullying behavior? Do a campaign to tackle that specific issue. Do that same survey to measure to see if you've had any impact. you might see a reduction in or an improvement in how safe students feel, a reduction in types of bullying behavior. Measurable impact is really, really important. Achievable, just make sure that it genuinely just is achievable. You are not going to eradicate all forms of bullying with one campaign. That's unrealistic. So make sure that whatever you're trying to tackle is specific and achievable in its own right. Relevant, is it relevant to your students? If you're thinking of doing an online safety campaign, but your students are already really clued up on how to keep themselves safe online, it's not going to be very relevant, is it? A survey is going to help you to find out what is. Finally, timely. As staff members, I completely understand that you just have so much to do, very little time to do it all in. So give yourselves, again, that realistic time constraint so that you're not pressured and overburdened by something that you're rushing to achieve. Finally, measure success and be proud to publish that impact. Measure success, again, we mentioned about surveys, but if you have found that because of your campaigns, students do perhaps feel happier, do feel more safe, or bullying incidents have reduced, definitely get that impact out there. Send that out to parents, put it on your school website, send it out to local newspapers, because that is something that you are deservedly proud of and needs to be pushed to the wider community to foster that whole school approach and to foster that community feel. So definitely make sure that you are publicizing your impact far and wide. So if you think that this will help, feel free to either take a picture of this screen, take a screenshot, a step-by-step basis on how to plan and structure your campaigns and start on your anti-bullying journey. So that's your aim 4, hopefully ticked off the list. Before we go on to further issues of support and resource articles, I just want to ask you a very quick question that's going to be answered with our interactive poll live up on screen. And I'm just simply asking you, based on the information seen today, the video seen, and the structured campaign information, how confident are you as an individual that when you go back to school, how confident are you in your ability to work with your students and to set up an anti-bullying campaign of some kind? Just based on the information, the videos that we've watched today, how confident are you that when we go back to school, you can incorporate some of these ideas, you can work with students, and you can set some type of anti-bullying campaign up? Have a look, think about it. We've got 70% of you voting so far, and we'll just see. This is more just, I guess, for my own knowledge of the usefulness of what you've seen today, and kind of reassuring that we can actually put some of these tangible actions into place that we can start to be thinking about now. 70% of voted. I'm going to give you a few more seconds, and then we'll have a look at which way it's gone. I'll give you 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look. That is really, really pleasing that it's either reasonably confident or very confident that some type of anti-bullying campaign can be set up when we go back to school. I mean, for me, that is incredible. That is exactly the point of today's webinar. And that's really reassuring. I genuinely believe that all of you listening along, you can go and produce something truly impactful. The fact that you're even here this morning, giving up free time to learn about this, is an incredibly beneficial point, but also really reassuring that you care enough to make a difference in your school. So thank you for just coming along. Further support, let's have a look on what we can give you before we finish today. So if you haven't seen one of our webinars before, then I do want to talk to you about our Crisis Messenger. We have teamed up with Crisis, and we have a free 24/7 tech service for students, but also for staff and parents who might be going through something quite difficult. You'll see the links there on our chat function. All you have to do is text DA to 85258, and there are trained professionals on the other side to talk through a multitude of different issues. Now, for students, it might be that they have been experiencing bullying behavior. It might be that in lockdown they felt really lonely, might be struggling with mental health, they might feel isolated. Whatever it is, you can text this anonymously and you can receive professional support. So if you think that this might be useful, staff members, then keep it, send it out to students, parents, other staff, and hopefully it might help someone who really needs it. Next, we do have a Facebook group for every staff member we've ever trained called Educators Against Bullying, and it's a really good place for staff members to share what they're struggling with regards to bullying behavior, but also what they're doing well, best practice, tips, guidance, a really good place to network and get that support. So if you feel like you might want to join. If you do join, don't try and sell your own books. It sounds ridiculous, but in the past we've had staff members join the Facebook group and try and market their own literature. So if you join, don't do that. We'll probably kick you off. Next, we have our anti-bullying resources bank. So for lockdown, we asked ourselves, how do we maintain relevance, but also how do we make sure we are offering something to staff and students who are going to really, really need it at a time like this. So we've completely revamped our resources portal, and we have some ready to download and ready to use right now, including how to facilitate a successful anti-bullying campaign. Lots of different relevant issues to today's webinar. So do have a look on our resources portal, and please do take whatever it is we have. It is now yours to use freely, however you think is best. Next, the Anti-Bullying Alliance have some really good CPD accredited training modules. I've done them myself. They really help solidify my understanding of bullying behavior, and actually really student friendly. So this could be a really good idea for something for you to send to your students, and maybe part of a little bit of homework as part of PSHE that's been missed during lockdown, that they could really get to grips with. And it makes sure that when we come back to school, if students have completed CPD accredited anti-bullying training, that is an incredible starting point for a changing of culture and behavior in school. And I've done them myself, like I say, and if I still had my class, I absolutely would get them to do it as well. Badges, we've spoken about badges. We do have a link for our website where you can learn a lot more about what it means, how to earn them, what campaigns can be done. So do have a look, and we'd love to hear from you. Our Aftercare team are ready to interact with you staff members on how we can all kind of work on this together. So have a look and see if it will help. Finally, if you have not had a look at our anti-bullying training, then we are definitely taking interest. We are registering schools to go into schools whenever we can. We are itching to get in there whenever government's guidance allows. So please do have a look. If you've already had training, then we can come back and do upskill, which trains the same ambassadors to kind of level up on the bullying knowledge, but also we can train brand new students on every age group, every year group as well. For primary schools, it's absolutely the same. So do have a look, and we are dying to come back. So apart from that, this is the point of the webinar where I would absolutely love to answer any questions that you might have about anything you've learned today, anything about anti-bullying, anything about campaigns, whatever it is. Feel free to put it into the Q&A box. I will hopefully answer it in real time right now. We do have a couple of questions that were sent through beforehand, so I might just be able to answer one of them now. One of the questions was, how do you promote an anti-bullying campaign message that parents are able to get involved in? Which is a really, really good question. What I would say to really get that parent involvement is to make sure that they're just aware that you are doing this type of thing. So many parents that I've interacted with have said that we had no idea our school had anti-bullying ambassadors. We had no idea they were running all of these different types of campaigns. That is absolutely an opportunity lost to really foster that whole school approach. So for primary schools especially, one thing that could really work is to have a notice board that you probably already do, but at an entrance or an exit to school, somewhere that parents are going to see it on a daily basis, and really publish your campaigns somewhere that is really accessible, that parents are going to know about. And also don't be afraid to send this out in a newsletter or publish it on your school website, saying that our school, we have anti-bullying ambassadors, here's what they're doing, here's what we're doing to tackle bullying behavior, and parents, this is how you can get involved. Just make sure it's accessible, publish it out there, and get parents involved in the school community. It can make a massive difference. If there are no questions from today's attendees, I just want to say a genuine thank you. This is the final webinar in our series for Primary School Focus. So if you've been to one of us before, it's been amazing to have you. One thing that's really, really helpful for us is if you could fill out a feedback form. We basically want to make sure that we are doing the best we can for you staff. And we are going to be doing future webinars coming up, but we want to know from you staff what you would like to learn about. So if you haven't filled out the survey, let us know. Let us know what topics you feel would be beneficial, and we will be back to deliver based on the information you give. So I'm going to leave this up on screen. Just want to say a massive thank you to all of you that have been with us. We hope to see you in some respect in the future, whether it's a training, whether it's a future webinars, and we hope that our resources are something that you could really find beneficial. So apart from that, I wish you an absolutely fantastic day. I wish you very, very good luck in your anti-bullying journey, and we hope to see you in some fashion very, very soon. Thank you.